Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a potential new snow system, or I should say storm system. This one will be quite a bit snowier than the last one. There could be some areas that pick up very heavy snow. And this thing will be giant. Again, not necessarily in the scope of its impacts, but just the size on the map, it will be tremendous. So I'm kind of eager to show you that, and we will be going over a bit from this previous system and what it kind of left behind as well, and what I guess went wrong and right with the forecast. So let's start talking about this. First off, I want to show you the snowfall totals from this past system. So this past system was mainly rainy for a good portion of the United States, but there was an area that was supposed to see snow, and it actually overperformed. So notice as I zoom in into these areas, really Minnesota and Wisconsin. Canada isn't shown here, unfortunately, as this is just a National Weather Service U.S. agency. But notice that today in the morning, we actually saw decent snows across upper Midwest. So it definitely overperformed. While there were, 2 to 3 inch amounts that were forecasted for these areas up north here, and there were some areas that got up to 3 inches, which is definitely a bit early. Do note that as far south as Minneapolis, the city, they got a inch, half an inch, anywhere from 1 to 2, really half an inch to 2 inches. You could see some of these reports were a 1.6, closer to 2 than 1. So definitely an impressive event. I looked at the forecast a few days prior before this, or really just a day prior, and the chance for the city to see a dusting of snow was, I believe, 20%. So they were obviously talking about it, but the fact that some areas here got over an inch of snow, that is most definitely impressive. And I do believe that this next system, I'm kind of talking about this because I do believe this next system will be slightly similar to this one, actually very similar, and I think it will be similar in terms of the snow, that it will overperform in some areas. So I'm kind of wanting to show you that now. So let's start talking about this by showing you the first model I want to show you, which is the National Weather Service, or sorry, the European model. I was just reading one of the tabs that I had open. I just completely misread that. Yeah, the European model. So notice we do have this big system, right? It left a lot of cool air. You can see it left several areas of circulation behind. I mean, they're very far spread out, and it has a massive cold front that is still kind of strung up across the northeast coast, delivering some rain to Maine and portions of southeastern Canada. So as I put this forward, you can see that there is going to be no big system in the near future, meaning in the next 24 to 48 hours. However, in terms of, I guess, near future, when you're talking about the long-term perspective, there will be. So watch this carefully. And what we do see is a reinforcing shot of cool air that starts beginning to show here on our map. Sunday. This is early Sunday, so this upcoming weekend, most areas, are relatively free of any impacts. Maybe, the cool air from the prior storm across the Midwest and Northeast, and the stalled out cold front, which has a kind of a lot of moisture that will be just sitting and chilling across the southwest and southern United States, and that will lead to some potentially even flooding issues, flooding concerns, because further southwest here we have some flash flood watches, flood warnings issued, and you can see that, it hasn't occurred yet, so not flash flood warnings, but they're saying that most likely with this there could be some pretty decent rain, and you can see especially if this were to fall across higher elevated areas, that could cause easily flash flooding with those amounts of rain. So let's go back to the European, and let me show you what happens here. So we have this reinforcing shot of cool air. Notice there's some showers, some snow showers here. This is now Sunday midday, or sorry, morning, just not early morning, around 7, 8 a.m. This is now closer to midday. You can see we start seeing this kind of spearheading into the United States. We see this cold front across the southern United States delivering stalled out cold front. At this point, it's just kind of bruising showers across a good portion of the south there, across Texas. So they need that rain, but it's just maybe not being beneficial to have too much of it at once. And notice that as I start putting this into motion, we see that this cool down, this spearhead of moisture, starts interacting with a little bit of energy that is kind of left floating around from the previous storm, but mainly it starts interacting with warm air out ahead of it. And what this does is it quickly kind of sparks up a low pressure. You can see right there, 1004. We have a lot of winds that are pretty strong, because as this low pressure forms, it kind of shoves these millibars into the other ones, and it creates an area of tighter winds. So obviously lake effect will be pretty prevalent across the UP. This is now early Monday, so again, not that terribly far out this system. Notice this low pressure is at this point 1004 millibars, so pretty weak, but take a look at this southern area of precipitation. I was talking about it earlier because it's going to be an important part of this forecast. So notice it's seemingly still disconnected from the system, but as I put this forward into now Monday morning hour commute, you can see this low pressure is strengthening, it's falling, it's now at 1,000 flat millibars. There's from at this point very heavy snowfall occurring off of Lake Superior, not only from the precipitation of the system, but just also the lake effect enhancement, primarily from the strong northeasterly winds here off of Superior. Warm waters, very cold air, perfect for lake effect setup. And do note that it's not limited just to the UP. As I put this forward, we see the system continuously intensifying. Again, very chilly air. Some of these areas that are going to be stuck in this cool weather, right, are going to not necessarily see rain or snow from this. They're just going to be dealt with that cool weather. And cool weather is an understatement. There could be some records broken here, how cold some of this air might get, especially into Missouri and Illinois. I'll show you that in just a minute. Let's continue on with the storm. Notice that by Monday, late in the afternoon, early evening hours, we see this system, very evidently, there's, that pretty decent amount of snow occurring across Ontario. So my viewers across here, you're definitely going to be seeing some snow here. Still heavy snow occurring just across the UP of Michigan, some mixing. Notice we do have some lake effect now starting to come off of Lake Michigan and the other lakes, which is going to be mainly in form of kind of rain and snow at the beginning. But once the system continues to intensify, you can see we see a cold front that develops very evidently, right? It becomes very slow moving. It's cut off from the rest of the flow. You can see the jet stream is very strung out across the United States, and what we see is it kind of gets closed off here, encircled by eventually cut off pretty much from the polar jet stream, and this system really takes its sweet old time. You can see it's not necessarily intensifying too rapidly, but it doesn't have to be too intense to create these very strong winds, as we have a high pressure here that is really slamming, literally slamming into this low pressure. It's moving in this way. The low pressure is really not moving at all. The low pressure winds spin counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere like this, and the high pressure winds spin clockwise, right? So we have these two extreme forces, and again, this high pressure strong and this low pressure strong, creating and sorry, I drew this incorrectly. The high pressure winds go like this. So it's kind of like coming from both sides of the energy, and you can see it's creating this funnel of extremely strong northerly winds. That's going to lead to some potentially very heavy lake effect and obviously very cold air. Notice northern Michigan now starts getting in on the snow. Southern Canada, folks living just across the the border across Superior, Lake Huron and Lake Superior, will start seeing some pretty heavy snow as well. Notice the Northeast yet again getting impacted by a pretty nasty cold front shower storms, though it seems as if the worst of it will develop off the coast. And notice that as I put this further and further out, we see this system move out, but again, it is absolutely massive. It's stretching out for thousands of miles, and it leaves in its wake quite a bit of this cold air. And again, I want to show you now the lake effect accumulations from this according to the European model, because they are rather impressive. Again, it won't be impacting too many areas with snow, or sorry, too many people, right? Obviously, the areas that are going to be by the lakes could pick up quite a bit, but you can see overall it doesn't have a massive footprint, which is why I'm not really calling it a snowstorm. There will be some pretty heavy amounts, though. You can see especially across Ontario, potentially the UP of Michigan, several areas potentially picking up even up towards a foot. And again, I don't want you to underestimate some of these bands across southwestern Michigan, even off of Lake Erie, Ontario, mainly Lake Erie, because Ontario is a bit further towards the north, where this system will be spinning its wind mainly off of kind of off that that fetch that is most prevalent for lake effect snow. It will be caught by Erie and especially the UP and Lake Michigan, and all it takes is one little band to kind of set up, and it could be at first a little bit of grapple, but as the kind of atmosphere cools, it could turn into a heavy snow band and leave a quick 5-6 inches of snow across the shores of Lake Michigan. So that's definitely something to note. Now again, the more impressive part of this is the cold air that's going to be left in this system's wake, and for that I want to show you the European model, but on this website. Again, same model as I'm showing you here, it's just that on this website I can show you the actual 2-meter temperature anomaly. So notice, if you are thinking that it's chilly currently across the United States, right, across your area, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, from this previous system, get ready for a lot more, because this is nothing compared to what's coming. Do note the West is warm and you will get warmer, so this kind of pattern will extremify, if you will. So again, by Saturday, this Sunday, nothing still, or kind of showing a massive system in the making. But by Sunday, we see a pretty nasty cold shot of air beginning to develop again. That's kind of what triggers the system in the first place. So it's a pretty odd storm, but it's definitely a interesting one and a powerful one. It will have a lot of impacts. And notice some of this cold air here. That's again just by far the most remarkable thing about the system. Those anomalies are definitely significant for this time of the year. That's going to potentially cause frost and freeze as well into the deep south. Again, notice it is at this point, in this picture here, affecting a good majority of the United States, the Southwest even here. The West excluded, it's going to be pretty warm. Northeast coastline also pretty warm. Everywhere else, rather chill and I should say rather cool and chilly, if not just downright cold. I mean, some of these temperature anomalies are significant, and you can see that this pushes well into the deep southern United States. And with all of those strong northerly winds from that high pressure and low pressure combination, it will be a very, very cold next midweek for a majority of the eastern United States. Now notice this does eventually move off slowly, and the warmth kind of comes back eventually quicker. At first the process is going to be slow, but I can't underestimate some of these anomalies. These are impressive. Let me show you some of these 2-meter temperature shaded, so what the thermometer will actually read. Notice during the daytime hours, this won't necessarily be as bad. It still will be definitely visible because for mid-October, a lot of these areas are still going to be chilly. You can see 40s, 30s, 50s across the south here, 60s, so still a little bit more, not as bad by Monday. But by Tuesday, as the system starts intensifying and this cold air settles even further south, notice during the nighttime hours, these frosts reach far, St. Louis, into the Ozarks, into northern Arkansas, and we have temperatures across Minnesota and Wisconsin that are more resembling of early November or even mid-November rather than October. And there could be even some areas that don't break above freezing, maybe, right, especially where that snow is falling across the UP, which is again impressive. And notice that during the day, 40s, 50s across the south, and during the night, we will probably have first frost across the southeast, especially northern Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, 35, 34, 30, 38, even down all the way into Florida, these impacts will be felt. So this system will be bringing a lot of cold air, way more than in terms of its snow. Its snowfall will be still impressive, especially for the Great Lakes region and into southeastern Canada, but this cold air will be definitely impressive. Notice even the Northeast doesn't escape this. We have major cities, Boston, New York, seeing very chilly temperatures, if just not outright freezes, and eventually this does move away, this cool weather, and the warm air replaces it, but it's going to last for a while. Pretty much the whole entirety of this upcoming week is going to be very, very chilly for the United States. So again, this isn't far out. This is this upcoming week. Now I want to show you what the GFS model is showing for this system. I showed you the European. I won't be showing you as slowly as what I did with the European because they relatively show similar things, but it's still good to show you different scenarios. Notice there we start seeing the first kind of spearhead of that very cold air. This is again what kind of triggers that system with that warm air. We see that low pressure develop. We see those northerly winds with that high pressure that you can't really see, but it's over here. Here's the low pressure. Look at those millibars. They become compact really quickly. The GFS is a lot more bullish with the snowfall on the UP and into northern Michigan. You can see it spreads that snow pretty far south. Again, it's a bit of a stronger system compared to what the European shows. The only thing that means is more snow and more cold. Just a nastier storm. And notice again, it does pick up into that southern cold front here that is stalled out, picks up that moisture, and it blasts into Canada. It's a very impressive storm, very large. It's going to have a lot of circulation with it, and it's going to be slow moving, so its impacts are going to be prolonged unnaturally. And after that, you can see the GFS still kind of continues some of that cool air, but it does move it out, and a warm air takes its place. And by the way, the pattern that could follow this big system could be even more chaotic and active than what we've been seeing for an even larger amount of the population. So in terms of total accumulated snowfall, the GFS is rather bullish with this. As I've said, there could be amounts across the UP that cross, according to the GFS, well over a foot. Again, there's no reason to believe that this isn't at least somewhat accurate, as some of these models, especially the GFS and European, did show decent snows across the northern Minnesota area, and that turned out to be true. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be true for this upcoming storm, but it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. And cities like Quebec could see some snow, maybe even Toronto, Montreal seeing some snowflakes. I wouldn't really say accumulating snow. You'll be just out of the range there, but large areas, maybe even Detroit, some of these lake effect fetches could be kind of brought by and swing some snow into you. Again, if this was to occur even a half month, later, so say late October into early November, this would be a lot more of a snowy system. And I guess that's still good that this is occurring a bit far out, away from a colder time period, because again, these temperature anomalies are gonna be impressive, truly impressive. So again, you can see that there's gonna be little bits of cool air, bouts of cool air across the Northeast, Midwest. Predominantly, though, you can see pretty warm, especially the west, southwestern Canada, northwestern United States, extremely warm temperatures. And I always say, where it must be up, it must be down, and it will be down in a big way here across the United States. You can see that by this upcoming Monday, things really start tanking. We start seeing very cold temperatures. Again, the GFS shows stronger anomalies than the European because it shows a stronger system. 7 a.m. portions of Kentucky, Tennessee here are literally potentially going to be seeing record cold for for this time frame, and that would I'm not sure if this will come true because the European has been a bit more accurate with this and it's a bit more realistic. If this were to come true, this would be pretty devastating. Obviously, it would end a growing season very quickly. Yeah, it's just not really a good scenario to be looking at. Farmers, people that rely on the weather and kind of don't really want, not rely on the weather, rely on it not seeing a abnormally early frost or freeze, may get negatively impacted by that, to say the least. Let's go back to these anomalies and notice this is just Tuesday. Wednesday, this pushes all the way into Florida, so for the southeast, some of these areas will probably be welcome. But yeah, it's gonna feel like fall, pretty much late fall, winter for some of these areas next week. Again, this does hang around for a little bit, but as I mentioned, the warm air does bring in a lot more, the pattern does bring in a lot more warm air pretty quickly. So by next week, Saturday, so pretty much a week from when I'm recording this video, it will be a lot more calm. It will be a lot more warm. And we could start seeing the beginnings of a pattern that is arguably even more interesting. Notice we see a lot of moisture floating around, potentially some big storms, maybe even snowstorms. The GFS is advocating for that. Look at that. That's a nasty snowstorm midweek, 2 weeks from now. Again, far out, but all the models are showing this, that the pattern will be changing. Whether or not this will lead to big systems and snow bouts, we'll have to wait and see. But you can see, especially the latest run of the GFS has been showing some pretty crazy stuff. Much more active west as well. So yeah, not necessarily, I guess, something that's going to be boring. Canadian, I didn't show you this model yet. I'll just skim through this. It's my least favorite model, though I can't say that it isn't accurate. Sometimes it does have actually decent takes on certain things, and I do believe that actually out of all these models, a few days ago, the Canadian was the most prominent one in showing this upcoming system here. Sorry about that. So, you can't disregard this model. Some of the trends that it shows are impressive. Notice what it shows is, again, very similar setup to what the European and GFS show. A nasty storm, very, very cold air, similar to what the other models show. And it's going to be bringing in quite a bit of cool air. You can see it keeps some of that cool air in around for a bit longer than the other models. And just to show you that it also shows very impressively cold air, look at those anomalies. I mean, once you start, sorry about that, once you start seeing those pinks and purples in terms of the blue colorations right there, those are, those are kind of flirting with records most likely. And again, I don't necessarily think it will be as cold as some of these models show. The teens across Minnesota, mid-October, sorry. It's not unheard of. But it's definitely something that would be making headlines and whatnot. So, yeah. And don't expect the West to be as cold as what the Canadian is showing. Canadian always does this. It kind of spreads this out. Doesn't really show as much of a good pattern, if you will, compared to the other models. The West will be pretty warm during this time frame. So, yeah. And you can see this affects all the way into the Southeast. So, that is that. If you live across the Southeast, you're probably going to be liking this as long as it, doesn't bring too cold of an air, frost freezes. If you live anywhere else and you don't want a frost or freeze early into the growing season, you'll be cursing this thing out. So yeah, that's basically it for today's video. And do note we're already seeing some snow up here, and it just doesn't look like anything's gonna be holding back some of those impressive lake effect amounts there. So yeah, that's basically it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.